Some mornings arrive wrapped in a sacred stillness, as if heaven itself is waiting for your first breath to stir the atmosphere. Maybe today is one of those mornings, where everything feels too quiet, too uncertain, too fragile. You wake up with a silent question pressing against your chest. Can I really take another step? Before you even speak it, God is already whispering back, yes, you can, because I am with you. There are moments in life when we stand at a crossroads between what we understand and what we can't yet see. Moments when the ground beneath us feels unstable and the future ahead looks like a shadow. But right there, in that fragile space, is where faith is born. Faith is not always the loud, confident declaration we see in movies or hear in sermons. Sometimes it's the quiet, trembling courage to take a step without knowing what will hold. It's extending your foot into the darkness and hoping grace meets you there. It's not seeing the whole staircase, but choosing to believe it's there one invisible step at a time. Psalm 372:3-4 declares, the steps of a man are established by the Lord when he delights in his way. Though he fall, he shall not be cast headlong, for the Lord upholds his hand. That promise doesn't say you'll never fall. It says even when you do, you won't be abandoned, because God himself will hold your hand. Have you ever been there? At the edge of something unfamiliar, some new path, new season, new decision, and felt fear grip your heart? You wanted to move forward, but everything inside you froze. You felt like God was asking you to take a step, but the step hadn't appeared yet. That's faith. Not certainty, not clarity. Just trust. God doesn't always reveal the destination. He shows us just enough to move. Because more than he wants to show you a result, he wants to build relationship. He's after something deeper than your understanding. He's after your heart. And that kind of trust, brothers and sisters, is not built in a moment. It's formed over time. In the waiting, in the worrying, in the wondering. There will be days when you're too tired to hope again, when your heart feels like it can't handle another disappointment, when your prayers feel weak and your faith feels small. But hear this, God is not standing at the top of some invisible mountain waiting for you to catch up. He's standing right beside you on the step you're afraid to take. He is not rushing you to climb faster. He is not impatient with your process. He is gently whispering, I've got you, one step at a time. And something sacred happens when you take that step, even if your hands are shaking, even if your heart is full of fear. Peace begins to replace panic. Strength begins to rise where weakness once sat. Courage, fragile and quiet, begins to bloom. Faith isn't always seen in loud declarations. Sometimes it's found in the whisper, Lord, I don't know what's next, but I trust you enough to move forward anyway. This isn't about being perfect. This isn't about having it all figured out. This is about showing up right where you are, in the mess, in the questions, in the middle of the unknown, because God never required perfection from you. He never asked you to be flawless before you stepped out. He only asked for your trust, and that next step you take, yes, even the small one, the hesitant one, the almost broken one, might be the very step that unlocks all that he's been preparing for you behind the scenes. The blessing, the breakthrough, the shift, but you won't see it standing still. Take the breath, take his hand, and take that step. You don't have to wait until you feel stronger. You don't have to have all the answers. You just need to believe that God walks with you, right here, right now. He walked with Moses when he didn't feel ready. He walked with Gideon when he was still hiding. He walked with Peter as he stepped out onto the waves, and he walks with you now. Let this be the moment you choose to trust again, not because the path is clear, but because the one walking with you is faithful. If your heart agrees with these words, take a moment right now and write, "I trust you, Lord," in the comments. Let your faith speak, even if your voice trembles. You don't need to feel fearless to take the next step. You don't need to have unshakable confidence or a flawless track record. What you need is what God has always asked for: a willing heart. When God called Moses to stand before Pharaoh, to lead an entire nation out of slavery, Moses didn't stand tall with courage. He hesitated. He looked at his stutter, his insecurities, his past, and said, "Please, Lord, send someone else." Exodus 4:13. But God didn't need eloquence. He needed obedience. God wasn't searching for perfection. He was searching for surrender. And despite all of Moses' doubts, it was the moment he said, yes, even with trembling lips, that the miracle began to unfold. You see, God steps into your story not after you feel ready, but while you still feel unqualified. He walks with you, not once you've figured it all out, but while you're still learning to trust. The truth is, obedience is the seed of breakthrough. Sometimes we wait for strength to appear before we move. But in God's kingdom, strength often arrives after we've taken the step. Isaiah 41:10 speaks directly to that fear. So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. These aren't just comforting words, they are a covenant. A divine commitment that no matter how weak, scared, or lost you feel, you will never be left alone. God is not distant. He is present. And his presence changes everything. Think about Gideon, another unlikely hero. When the angel of the Lord appeared to him, Gideon was hiding in fear. Yet the Lord called him something radical. The Lord is with you, mighty warrior. Judges 6:12. God called him mighty before he ever lifted a sword, before he believed in himself, before he saw a single victory. Why? Because God doesn't define you by your fear. He defines you by his presence. The same is true for you. Even now, while your knees shake and your faith feels small, he looks at you and says, "You are mine. You are chosen. You are equipped." God doesn't wait for your confidence. He responds to your courage. And courage is simply moving forward in spite of fear. It's saying, "I'm scared, but I'm stepping anyway." That's why Peter was able to walk on water. Not because he had no fear, but because he moved toward the voice of Jesus. Jesus didn't give Peter a detailed explanation. He simply sighed, "Come." Matthew 14:29. And that one word was enough. The moment Peter stepped out of the boat, the natural became supernatural. What was impossible became possible, not because Peter was powerful, but because his step was rooted in obedience. That's how heaven responds to movement. Too often, we wait for a sign before we move. But what if the sign comes after? What if the next miracle is waiting on the other side of your step? Obedience opens the door. Movement unlocks grace. The enemy loves to paralyze you in your doubts. He wants to convince you that you're not ready, not spiritual enough, not strong enough. But hear this. If God called you, he already qualified you. You don't have to climb a mountain today. You don't have to solve every problem or understand every plan. You just have to take one more step. Right where you are. In the mess, in the confusion, in the questions. That's where God does his deepest work. It's not in the spotlight. It's in the shadows. Not in the finish line, but in the first faithful step. So take it and watch what God does with your yes. You may not see the full picture yet, but you are not walking blind. You are walking by faith, and faith sees the unseen. As scripture reminds us in 2 Corinthians 5-7. For we walk by faith, not by sight. So keep walking, beloved. Not because it's easy, not because it's clear, but because the one who walks with you is faithful. If you've ever said yes to God in the middle of fear, drop a "Yes, Lord" in the comments. Your step may be the encouragement someone else needs today. There's something about the middle that tests us more than the beginning, or the end. The beginning feels full of possibility, dreams are fresh, vision feels clear, energy runs high. The end often comes with celebration and relief, the breakthrough. Finally visible, the answered prayer in your hands. But the middle is where the road stretches long and the results feel far away. It's where your faith begins to feel thin and your heart questions what your eyes can't yet see. This is where many grow weary, not because they don't believe God exists, but because they don't feel Him. The silence of the middle can feel like absence. But hear me, beloved, God is not absent in the middle. He is doing His deepest work. This is where your roots grow down, where your trust is refined, and where your character is shaped for the calling ahead. Look at the life of David. Before he ever wore a crown, he was anointed by God, the prophet. Samuel poured oil over his head and declared him the next king of Israel. It was a divine moment, powerful, prophetic. And then what happened? David went right back to the fields, not to a palace, not to a throne, but to the sheep, to the solitude, to the silence. From there, he went to caves, to hiding, to running for his life. For years, David lived in the middle, anointed, but not yet appointed, chosen, but still waiting, misunderstood, hunted, alone. And yet it was in those hidden places that David learned the heart of God. It was in the middle that he wrote songs. It was in the middle that he developed the worshipers' spirit. It was in the silence that he found intimacy with his Creator. So when he finally rose to the throne, David didn't just carry a title, he carried God's trust. That's what the middle does. It prepares you not just for the outcome, but for the weight of the calling. Because if you skip the middle, you miss the becoming. Maybe today, you're in that same space. You're too far to turn back, but still too tired to press forward. It feels like you're standing in the in-between, where you're no longer who you used to be, but not yet who you're becoming. It's uncomfortable. It's stretching. It's holy. Don't despise this season. Don't rush through it. God is doing something in you before He does something through you. What feels like a delay is often divine development. What feels like stillness is actually strengthening. What feels like a pause is actually a process of preparation. You're not forgotten. You're being formed. The middle is not a punishment. It's a proving ground where your identity is secured, where your motives are purified, where your endurance is built, and where your faith begins to look less like emotion and more like conviction. James 1:2-4 tells us plainly, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." You're not stuck. You're being strengthened. You're not lost. You're being led. You're not behind. You're being built. So today, lift your eyes again. Take a deep breath and take the next small step. It may not feel like a giant leap. It may not look like a miracle, but every obedient step in the middle matters. Every moment you choose to trust instead of retreat, heaven takes notice. You don't have to see the outcome. You just have to obey in the present. Because God is not just at the destination. He's deeply present in your process. If you're walking through a middle season, type "God is working in me" in the comments. Let your step of faith speak louder than the silence. What do you do when you're in the middle and the path ahead still isn't clear? You do what the faithful have always done. You take one more step, not a giant leap, not a perfect performance. Just one more small, surrendered, obedient step. Because obedience is the soil where miracles grow. Think of the Israelites standing at the edge of the Jordan River. The promised land was within reach, but one obstacle remained. The river was still flowing. There was no bridge, no miracle, just water. God gave them instructions through Joshua. Step into the water carrying the Ark of the Covenant, and I will make a way. He didn't tell them how it would happen. He just told them when it would happen. After they stepped in, Joshua 3:15-16 says, "Now the Jordan is at flood stage. Yet as soon as the priests who carried the ark reached the Jordan and their feet touched the water's edge, the water from upstream stopped flowing." Did you catch that? It didn't part. When they prayed about it, it didn't part when they stared at it. It parted when they stepped into it. God waited for their movement. And when they moved, the miracle met them. It's the same for you. There are promises already prepared, provision already arranged, breakthrough already aligned, but they're not waiting on your perfection. They're waiting on your participation. The enemy will try to convince you that you have to feel strong before you move. But the truth is, grace is given in motion. Strength shows up in the step. God doesn't pour out power before the obedience. He pours it out in the obedience. So if you're standing at the edge today, unsure of what's next, ask yourself this: what's the next small act of obedience I can take? Maybe it's praying again, even though you feel dry. Maybe it's forgiving someone, even though your heart still aches. Maybe it's trying again, applying, pursuing, reaching, releasing, even though it didn't work last time. Whatever it is, that act of obedience is not small in heaven's eyes, because every yes to God opens the door for His power to move through you. Don't underestimate the spiritual significance of a simple step. You may feel like it's just a prayer, just a whisper, just one more quiet decision to trust. But in God's hands, even your smallest act of faith becomes a seed that bears fruit far beyond what you can see. Hebrews 11:6 reminds us, without faith, it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to Him must believe that He exists and that He rewards those who earnestly seek Him. God is not looking for performance. He is looking for persistence. One step after another, one prayer after another, one surrender after another. And here's the beauty. As you keep walking, you don't just walk toward the promise, you walk with the promise keeper Himself. You'll find that the grace you thought you didn't have is released in the moment you move. The peace you've been asking for meets you in the process. The strength you didn't feel before begins to rise as your feet obey, because God honors motion. And miracles often look like movement. So don't stand still, waiting for everything to make sense. Take the next step, even if it's small, even if it's quiet, even if it's trembling. That step could be the doorway to everything He's been preparing for you behind the scenes. And as you keep moving, something even greater happens. Your obedience becomes a light for others. Someone is watching your journey. Someone needs your courage. Someone's breakthrough is tied to your faithfulness. Just like Esther, she was hidden in the palace, unsure, unready, uncertain. But then the moment came, and she stepped forward, not just to save herself, but to save a nation. Esther 4:14 says, "And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this?" Your life carries that same weight. Your yes today might become someone else's lifeline tomorrow. If you're ready to step forward even when it's hard, write, "I will take the next step" in the comments. Someone else may find the courage to rise because you chose to walk by faith. And now you're here, somewhere between the person you used to be and the one God is shaping you into. You've walked through doubt, through silence, through questions that had no easy answers. You've taken hesitant steps, stumbled, paused, and yet here you are, still standing, still seeking, still walking. That in itself is a testimony. Maybe you haven't seen the breakthrough yet. Maybe the path ahead is still clouded by uncertainty. But one thing is clear, you are not alone. You never have been. The same God who carved paths in the wilderness, who split seas and shook prison doors open, is the same God walking beside you now. And with every step you take, you're not only walking toward his promises, you're becoming the promise. Your obedience is shaping you. Your surrender is sanctifying you. Your quiet faith is moving heaven. Because God isn't just working through your life, he's working in it. Every tear, every prayer, every step. You don't have to wait until you have it all figured out. You don't have to wait until you feel bold or brave or perfectly spiritual. You can start right here, in your weakness, in your weariness, in your wonder, because the power of God doesn't require your perfection. It simply responds to your presence, your willingness, your open heart. So stop waiting to feel like you're enough. You are enough because he is with you. The Spirit of God doesn't demand your strength. He brings his . And now, as this moment unfolds, there's an invitation resting on your heart to take another step, to trust again, to move forward, not because you know the destination, but because you know the shepherd. So pause, breathe, and say it with your whole heart. God, I trust you. Even when I don't understand, you are still good. Even when I'm afraid, I will still follow. Even when I feel weak, I believe you are strong in me. Because that's where the miracle begins, not in having all the answers, but in having a heart that's still willing to believe. Now let's come together and pray.